Hey, God bless you. I just want to talk to you about what the Lord said to me in my prayer time. So he spoke the word Stockholm Syndrome to me. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Stockholm Syndrome, but back in 1974, they came up with the terminology for Stockholm Syndrome because there was a group of people who they were kidnapped. And once they were able to be released, instead of, being a part of the witness stand or whatever they want to call it, instead of doing that, they basically were on the defense of these people. And they tried to raise money for the kidnappers and everything else. And no one could understand it. And so psychologists, I suppose, got involved and coined this term Stockholm Syndrome, because it's when you are in love with your captors. I'm sure this existed way before 1974, but that's the first time that they decided to, I guess, make it part of the DSM. So then people began to talk about it. You heard a reemergence of it back when Patty Hearst was abducted and kidnapped. And then some time went by, then they found her robbing a bank with her kidnappers. So there was a lot of discussion on whether or not she had Stockholm Syndrome or not. So that brings me to, why is God speaking to me about Stockholm Syndrome? And the question that I want to present is, are there things that, have had you bound or have you bound currently that basically you're in love with? That these things literally have you bound, and you continue, not because you're held to them, meaning you're free to go. It's a choice, but yet you keep choosing to be in defense of whatever this thing is. So you can put into, and this is whoever it applies to. So if it don't apply to you, it don't apply. But whatever it is, it could be porn. It could be drugs and alcohol. It could be just whatever. And you keep making excuses or defense of why it's okay. So it's like just like the people in 1974 who came up, they decided they want to pay, they want to come up with excuses, and they want to come up with a defense fund for their captors. It's the same thing that God is saying here, is that you want to come up with defenses and excuses for why you need to be continually bound to this sort of thing. Now, it might sound crazy. It might sound crazy, but if you think about it, people do this all the time, where they make excuses. Well, God ain't got no man, so, I kind of have to do what I got to do by myself. You know what I mean? At least I'm not out there, fornicating, So people do it all the time. They put it on a scale, and, they put that sin on the scale and say, well, it's not as bad as. And so God is saying that some of you have Stockholm Syndrome in order to make it okay, because how Stockholm Syndrome came about is like, it's like a coping mechanism in order to make it okay that, in order in your mind to make it okay for what has happened or what is going on, you have to make it okay. You have to make excuses. And so what God is saying, this is what you're doing in the spirit, is that you're making it okay. You're giving yourself excuses, and thereby you then give agreement. You're giving your agreement, and that is what gives the enemy justification to come and then enter into your life, or have a stronghold into your life. So basically, I know you guys have heard this. Do you love the sin you're in? You know what I'm saying? Because some people, they don't want to be helped. Some people want to stay bound. And that's why what comes to mind is the man that was by the water of Bethesda for, I think, the gate called Beautiful, for 38 years. And Jesus asked him a question. He said, well, do you want to be healed? Wilt thou be healed? Do you want to be healed? And I can almost see it. The man probably looking at him like, of course I want to be healed. But how many people know that there's a certain level, there's something that you get. There's something that you get from being disabled or being pitied or having some type of illness. And before you clap back at me for saying that, I know what I'm speaking of from experience. So if you have a issue or you're disabled, you can sometimes get sympathy or attention for that. And so a lot of times you got to ask people, well, do you want to be healed? And they might look at you crazy, like, of course I want to be healed. But there's a payoff sometimes that you can get from being disabled. That's why there's a whole mental health terminology called Munchausen or Munchausen by proxy, because there's attention that you get from being sick or having an issue that's what you would call pitiable. So this just in, what comes to my mind is depression, because I was coming up with all these different issues, which are fine, but I believe the Lord wants me to speak about depression. And so a lot of people feel like there's nothing they can do. If you're depressed, you're depressed. And I have experience with this because I remember, getting up in the morning and just, speaking out of my mouth, or thinking at first, I think I'm depressed. And then speaking it, yeah, I'm depressed. And I just kept saying it in my mind, and I kept speaking it. And it was just like, and I literally just gave myself permission just to be sad that day. Almost like I owed it to myself, which is, when I think about it, is really crazy. But it was just like, if I want to sleep around and cry, or do whatever, it was just like I gave myself permission. And then it was the end of the night, and I was going to bed. And I, at the time, was married. My husband was away at work, and I remember laying down in the bed, and the space where he usually sleep was empty. I just was on my side of the bed, and I remember the Lord saying to me, the spirit of depression is seeking to lay down in the bed with you. And I just knew it was like it literally was going to lay down in the bed where my husband usually was. And I just remember getting angry and saying, well, God, why you going to let the spirit of depression, why you going to let him come like that? And it was at that moment that I realized it wasn't God that was allowing the spirit of depression to come. It was me who called the spirit of depression. Because if you're speaking that and if you're thinking that, then what happens is you get depressed on one level, like on a human, physical, soulish level. But then you can call out on a different level the spirit of depression to come, because you are basically giving your agreement for that to come. And so you can use that example for anything. You can use it for the spirit of lust. You can use it for whatever. You literally are, words have power, right? We all can agree to that. So when you are literally putting that out in the atmosphere, or even thinking it, you're basically you're giving your agreement out into the spirit realm for whatever that wants to come in to come in. And so, long story short, I just remember that, God in his grace and his mercy didn't allow that spirit to come, But But then once that happens, it becomes so much harder to come up out of it, to come up out of depression, because now you have something partnering with you in order to keep you that way, to keep you in your depression. And it's an example of, it would have been an example of Stockholm Syndrome, because I wanted to be depressed. I had made allowances for that, at least that day, to be depressed. And that's what we do. That is what we do in so many different levels and so many different avenues. And so my thing, so it's like, okay, so then what do I do? What do I do? Maybe I have Stockholm Syndrome. I don't know it. And like I said, this applies to whoever it applies to. If you just perfect, then you ain't got to worry about this. But, and it reminds me, because, I remember talking to a couple of Christian friends, and, we were just kind of like, we would, fellowship, and we would speak and talk to each other. And I remember being like, oh man, God got on me, about this. And, God corrected me about this and that and the other thing. And I would just remember, I'm like, I used to ask him, I'm like, God don't never tell you anything about yourself. And I mean, like, about yourself, like, you need to get your stuff together type stuff. Like, God don't never dig in your behind about anything. Like, he don't never. And what I believe is that God does tell, he chastises this is biblical, so that ain't what I believe, but this is biblical. Like, God chastises every son that he has. He corrects, he prunes. And John 15, it says that, God cuts down every branch that doesn't bear fruit. And he prunes the ones that do bear fruit so they can bear more fruit. And so I don't understand how no one, at least the people that I was speaking to, that, I don't understand how God wasn't speaking to them about correction or things that they need to tune or prune up or whatever. And it's not that God wasn't speaking to them about what they needed to fix. It's that they didn't want to hear it. They closed their ears. They wanted to hear, everybody wants to hear all that good stuff. The Lord is saying good and faithful servant. And, sure, he says that, but in the in-between time, he's telling, okay, just cut this out. Stop doing that. God will tell you. He will tell you, but correct you. Even I'm not even saying like big stuff, little things. He'll correct you. So my thing is that if we listen, if you have a relationship with God, just listen to what he's telling you to do in terms of correction. Because what happens is if we harden our hearts and we don't want to listen and we don't want to hear, then what will happen is that it's going to be hard for us to hear him, and or you're going to sear your conscience so bad that it's really going to be difficult for God. Not for God, because nothing is impossible, but it's really, really going to be difficult for you to be able to repent and hear what he's trying to tell you. So that's it, basically. Those are my questions. So Stockholm Syndrome, you don't have to have all the syndrome means a group of symptoms. You don't have to have all the symptoms to have Stockholm Syndrome. So my question is, do you love the sin you're in? And it seemed like such a simple question, but we have, as humans, we have so many layers to us, so many things that we have hidden, things that we don't even know that's in there. And that's why we have to go to the Lord, because the Bible says, Who can know? I'm paraphrasing. Who can know the heart? It's desperately wicked. Like, you don't know everything that's in your heart. You think you do, and that's why God. That's why God asks us questions sometimes. You know, a lot of people say, like in Genesis, why did God say, Adam, where are you? Didn't he know where Adam was? Yeah, he knew where Adam was, but he's asking Adam because Adam didn't know where he was. It's like a rhetorical question, so to speak. He's trying to get Adam to realize what literally just happened. Like, he's just trying to get Adam. So anytime God asks you a question, it's not because he don't know. He's asking the question because he wants you to learn. God is the ultimate like teacher. And that's how most teachers teach, is they will put a question out there to get you to thinking. And so anytime he asks you a question, it's to get you to know, to figure out what's in your heart, or figure out what's going on or what you done did. So that's the question for you. Do you love the sin you're in? There might be something that you just kind of like doing. Like, there's a payoff. Just like I talked about with like the handicap. Like, I know there's someone that I love very dear to me. And I tell her all the time, like, okay, you're getting a payoff from this. Like, you're getting a payoff from this, you know. And trust me, she, wants to be healed. She wants to be healed. But there's certain things that she gets a payoff from being disabled. And so it's the same thing with a lot of these different issues. There's a payoff that you get. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure I darn sure know that there's a payoff that you get if you fornicating out there. You know what I'm saying? I know there's a payoff, but it's temporary. You know what I'm saying? There's a payoff if you're dabbling in drugs. There's certain drugs where you literally gonna have to go to the hospital to get off. Okay, alcohol, you might have to go to the hospital to get off of that. You could literally end up dying unless the Lord supernaturally does something for you, which he can. And I know people have that testimony. But there's certain things that we might engage in that it's like, okay, it's not at the level of addiction. It's abuse. But you like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it a little bit because I'm really stressed out. And I'm just going to do this. My anxiety is through the roof. I'm just going to do this right quick, And maybe at a certain point, it's not to the point of addiction. But if you keep going down that road, it might become a stronghold. You know what I'm saying? And the issue of, it's a whole nother issue, because drugs and certain drugs that can be done, even over-the-counter drugs. I remember I was going through one time. I was going through a season, and it was a particular over-the-counter drug, and I ain't gonna say it because I don't want to give nobody any ideas, but it was a particular over-the-counter drug, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take it so I can sleep or whatever. But when you do stuff like that, especially if you're someone that has a high calling, because I believe everybody got a high calling anyway, but if it's just how much of that calling you want to do. But I digress. But if you somebody with a high calling, or you really high up in the Lord, and you dabble in certain things that kind of relax your mind a little bit too much, that's exactly what the enemy needs to come in and cause mental health, or cause whatever, or cause an attack. So you have to be mindful. And those of you with that high calling, like I said, we all got one. Those of you with that high calling, there's certain things that you can't do like everybody else. There's I'm like, there's Christians and they listen to secular music. God, why can't I? It's gotten to the point where I can't even listen, like stuff that it's not even bad. It's like, it's not saying satanic. God, why I can't listen to it? There's certain things. I'm just to the point where I don't listen to nothing no more that's secular. And it'd be stuff that I love. And it ain't nothing, like literally it's nothing wrong with it. But if I listen to it, I'm being attacked at night. And that's a lot of times, what happens is the enemy will go before the father and accuse and say, she's listening to my stuff. She's listening to my stuff, so I can come and attack, And for somebody that ain't really living nothing, the enemy is gonna be like, okay, whatever. You can listen to it and jam all day long and nothing will happen. But like I said, those of you with that high calling that are really living out your purpose and living out your destiny, you can't afford to go do certain things. And whatever it is, I know that for me, I can't do it. I know it's off the subject, but I don't know. So it's that whole mentality. So talking about Stockholm Syndrome, it's that whole mentality of in order to survive, I kind of have to go along with my captors. So in order to survive, I gotta survive. I gotta go along with my captors. So I'll just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then maybe I won't be as tormented as much. The danger of being tormented will be lessened by me going along with it. And so it's kind of like the lesser of two evils. And there's no such thing in the life of a Christian. There's no such thing as the lesser of two evils. Where do you see that written in the Bible? You know what I'm saying? Because we always say, well, I got to pick the lesser of two evils. I'm not fornicating, but I am masturbating. It's the lesser of two evils. There ain't no such thing. There is no such thing, because both of them will allow for the spirit of lust to come in and have a stronghold in your life. So, and with sin, it's never enough. It's just never enough. So you do a little bit and then it's going to be full blown after a while. You know what I'm saying? But, all right, well, that's it. I know I kind of rambled a little bit, but at the end of the day, there's somebody out there struggling with basically loving the sin that they're in. And they're bound. And God is saying that you don't have to be bound. You can be free. And just listen to God. There's some things that he wants to prune. There's some things that he wants to correct. Don't harden your heart when you hear it. Everything that you should be happy. I remember when I first figured out that God was talking and some of the things he was saying was like, now you're going to stop doing this and you're going to cut that out. And I was like, oh God, I don't remember exactly everything that he said, but it would be like, and not that I'm arrived, he's still telling me stuff, but I remember I'd be like, dang, God be getting on me. But I remember being happy about it because I knew what the Bible said, that he scourges every son that he loves. And that means he loves me. If he going, that's the same thing with your earthly parents. If you had no discipline and if they didn't they didn't chastise you, the Bible says then they don't love you. You know what I mean? If you're a parent, you're going to put structure in place. You're not going to let your kid, if they're little or whatever, just run out in the street. If you let them do that, then obviously you don't love them. So that's the same thing with our God, is that he loves us and he going to make sure that he wants the best for us. He wants us to be the best us that we are. And he's going to make sure that happens. So don't harden your heart when he starts to tell you about yourself. And a lot of people are like, why am I not free? It's because when God's trying to correct you, you harden your heart and you don't want to listen to hear what he has to say. It's for your benefit. It might be hard at first because, as they say, we creatures of habit. It might be hard at first, but eventually it'll become easy, whatever it is that he's telling you to cut out or to do. All right. So God bless you. I love you until we meet again.